Welcome to Unit 1 of Marketing 221 for fall 2015. My name is Mr. Rankin. I'm going to try to do a quick overview of Unit 1. This does not replace reading the book, but I want to give you a very brief overview. So let's start out with defining what consumer behavior is. I define it, what's simple for me is just to say it's a study of how consumers make decisions. The more formal or the definition in the book is it's a set of value-seeking activities that take place as people go about addressing their real needs. Well, you can pick whatever one. You got the book, and you got it's basically this semester we're going to be studying how consumers make decisions, which, you know, on the surface seems very simple, right? How do they go from here where they recognize a need for a want or a need, they recognize they need something or want something, to over here where they actually make the purchase? Well, there's a big black box in here that we'll be studying. For example, there might be all kinds of internal influences. In this case, I might be thinking with my mind that I really need to buy a Honda Civic. But with my heart or my affect or my feeling, I might be saying, boy, that Corvette looks really good. And then the third thing internally, there might be individual differences. My wife might want the Corvette. I might want the Civic. So we'll be studying all of that. So first thing we have to understand, section 1.1, is we can study consumer behavior is the human behavior. How do humans make that decision going from recognizing they have a want or a need, doing some research around that want or need, making an exchange, which is where I exchange money or time or something for a product or service, and then going through some post-purchase activity in understanding to see if it really created value for me. So we can go through and we can study all of this human process where someone goes from simply recognizing a need to making a decision. The second type of study is we can study consumer behavior as a field of study and how it impacts, because how consumers feel and what consumers think is going to have a big impact on our marketing strategy. It's going to have a big impact on the marketing tactics we choose, which are simply how do we implement the strategy. It's also going to have an impact on economics, sociology, psychology, all of these things, so we can study consumer behavior as an overall field of how it impacts all these things. We can also study how it does internally, how people make the decisions, and we'll be doing both in this course. A little bit about background about ways consumers are treated is a broad generalization, and I think we all know this. The more competition, the better for consumers. The more choices they have, etc. Most firms, even though they have a mixture of orientations, most firms lean in their value statements for one of these three categories. Either they're customer oriented and their number one focus is customer satisfaction, or they have what's called a market orientation where their focus is on competition, customers, employees, or they have what's called a stakeholder orientation where they look at the community, they look at the government, they look at employees, they look at unions, all the stakeholders. Usually they will fall into one of these as a priority, even though they'll do all three. Now, understanding the customer, as it's migrated more and more, firms have understood the importance of repeat business and having a relationship with the customer, which is called relationship marketing. And you see it in the auto industry where they work real hard to build up relationship because, you know, now with all the information you can get on the internet about the cost of a car, the profitability is in the service of that car, the profitability is in financing the car, the profitability is in upgrading the paint job on that car, etc. And therefore it's changed and has made auto dealerships much more of a relationship marketing. Section 1.3 talks about the roles or benefits of consumer behavior to business, society, and customers. Business, the biggest thing is it helps us differentiate our markets or segment our market, and undifferentiated is where I have one product for all markets. Differentiated is where I have several products for the market. Niche marketing is where I have one product for a very small market, one small market segment. But the biggest advantage of using this in business, if I understand my customers, I can probably be more profitable. And one thing you're seeing going on now in the marketplace is all these loyalty cards, particularly with grocery stores, so we can understand, or they can understand, what your purchasing habits are, so that if they send you a coupon for baby formula, they know you're going to use baby formula because they can look at your past purchases and understand. 20 years ago, I don't think these existed. Today, the average person has 14 of these. Society uses it, consumer behavior, to understand policies, procedures, regulations. You see it in seat belts. You see it in some of the things they've taken on with smoking policies. You see it with airbags. Understanding consumers helps us with society's needs. The last thing is for the individual consumer, if you better understand your behaviors, and if you want better understand your motivations, or if you better understand how advertisers utilize those things, it might help you with your personal finances. Average debt right now, credit card debt, Americans, is about $8,000 a year. $8,000 is their current balance. And just an interesting, if they paid the minimum payment on that, which they encourage you to do, and never put another penny on the credit card, it would take them 27 years to pay off that credit card. So understanding this stuff can really help businesses, society, and consumers. Two kinds of approaches to studying. We can do interpretive, which is qualitative analysis or research. That's where we do case studies or focus groups, and that works very well for general long-term projects. Like I might, excuse me, I might have a focus group if I want to say, what should be our oil and energy policy for the next 50 years? Well, it would be hard to do a quantitative analysis on that by answering questions. I probably would want to have a group of experts to give sort of a qualitative diagnosis of that problem. Quantitative is where I do measuring, analysis. I have structured questions, oftentimes multiple choice, oftentimes rate this product from 1 to 10. I can measure it. That's great ideally when I'm looking at more of a short-term time frame. Consumer behavior is dynamic. I think we get this in every course. I mean, the world's becoming more globalized. Only 5% of the world's population lives in the U.S., you probably know. Most of the growth in the next 10 years is going to come from underdeveloped countries, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Lots of technology changes. You see that all over the place. Lots of demographic changes. In the next 50 years, the number of people over 80 is going to increase fivefold. By 2050, there'll be more people over the age of 60 than under the age 18, changing pretty dramatically. The world's economy is changing dramatically. The poor countries are becoming much richer, and now they can begin to afford luxury items where in the past they couldn't. So lots of changes, lots of different customers, a lot going on in the world. So that covered Chapter 1. Chapter 2 was all about value, and they start out talking about this customer value framework, which basically says value can be two types of value, which we'll go through in a second, but it can be influenced by internal influences, which we'll go through, the consumption process, which can be influenced by external influences, can be influenced by situational influences, and can also be influenced by our relationship quality. All of these feed into the consumption process and the value, and this is exactly the way the book is laid out, right? We talked about that. We're going to talk about this, then internal, then external, then situational, and wrap it all up. So that's sort of the framework of how all of this works. Two types of values. There's utilitarian. That's where you utilize or use the product. And there's hedonic. That's more of a feeling. How do I feel? I get an immediate gratification. So, most products are on some sort of a scale. They're not one or the other. But, if we take a cupcake, well, it does fulfill some utilitarian function. I mean, it does add calories to my daily diet. But I think it tends to be, as this shows, more on the hedonic scale or value in that it's a treat. It's the feeling I get when I go have a cupcake. If I go to a cafeteria, that would probably be more on the utilitarian. If I go to the Angus barn, that's probably more on the hedonic scale. I think you get the two types of value. If not, let me know. Section 2.3 talks about the different marketing strategies and tactics. So when I do any marketing, the first thing I have to do is I come up with a marketing strategy, and that is, what is the value of my product? How do I differentiate it? What makes it special? What makes it better than the other guy's product? How do I segment my market? Because probably everybody's not interested in my product. Which customers are interested? Again, we go back to the putter. I might make the greatest putter in the world. The value is you get a better golf score with it. It's different because, I don't know, it has better whatever, made of a better material or something. But then I have to segment the market, right? There's no sense in focusing on tennis players if I've got a new golf putter. And then the last thing is, how do I concentrate or promote that? How do I get it so that those folks that are interested in my product hear about it? Then the marketing tactics are, how do I implement that strategy? What specific pricing or promotional strategies do I use? And all of this comes together in sort of a total value concept, right? All of these things add together give me the total value of my product, because I may have augmented products, like I might give free oil changes in some things, I might give service, I might give warranty, I might give something with the putter, a free set of golf balls, or a cover for it, or whatever. The last point they make is that value is co-created. So I think of the gym membership here, right? So if they give a gym membership, there's no value created unless I go, right? Just paying every month. So it's the value is dependent both upon the gym to supply the equipment, but the customer to actually show up and use the equipment. So we talked about this a little bit. Once I get my marketing strategy, I've got to figure out how to segment and differentiate the market. So the formal definition of a segmented market is segment market into groups based on different demand curves associated with each group. In my simple language, I say, look, what customers or group will benefit from the value of my product? I mean, I don't need to be a genius to say a tennis player, I don't have to evaluate their demand curve for my brand new putter. People that are interested in my putter are the golfers. Then I have to differentiate my market. What market conditions in which consumers do not view all competing products as identical? Well, what makes my putter special? Why is my putter the best putter? And in this section, you can ignore for our purposes the equations and the elasticity and that stuff. To me, what you need to understand is you've got to segment the market and say, all right, what customers find the value of my product valuable to them? And it's usually not every customer. You usually have to segment it. And then, what makes my product special? What makes it different? And oh, by the way, you've got to be able to communicate these relatively quickly. All right, 2.5 talks about different ways to analyze markets. So perception maps are a great tool to help you position your product. This is a simple example. I wouldn't memorize it because different businesses are going to do different ones. But this is different cereals on a taste good, taste bad, high nutrition, low nutrition. And you put them where you think these segments would be so that you can see where you stand next to the competition. They talk about the concept of blue ocean. That's where you're way far away from everybody else. Okay? Key thing here, great tool. I wouldn't memorize this one because your business is probably going to use something a little different, but they're going to use the concept. The last thing they talk about is total customer lifetime value. So This is more and more businesses are understanding that they have customers for a lifetime. And there's value, and as we learn more about customers and more about consumer behavior, not all customers are the same. Some are much more valuable than others, and this is pretty much common sense. The frequency of their purchases, the size of their purchases. Do they refer other customers for you? How loyal are they? Do they have complaints? Do they have potential to grow? A lot of folks now are following people's social media to see if they refer and all this other information that they can glean. The more I know about the customers and the more I know about how they behave or will behave, the better I can position my marketing strategy. So that's the gist of Unit 1. Again, this doesn't replace reading the book. You still got the book to read, the quizzes to do. This is just a quick overview to sort of give you some concepts of what's coming when you read the book. Let me know and have a good week.